gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to a brand new episode of With the Side of Chaos. It's Patricio, a.k.a. Rocky. I don't have an Aaron because this is, once again, one of my special one-on-one interviews. But as always, this gentleman, somehow, some way, snuck his way into this interview, which I am like, of course, we have to let him in. But before I introduce him, I am going to introduce our guest. I am joined by an upcoming podcast superstar here in the Central Florida area. And she's been doing her rounds with a little bit of a podcast tour for her new show called What a Day Kids. And I'm joined in studio tonight with Melissa Winston, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I don't know why I kept wanting to call you Melissa Wright for some odd reason. Like I had to pull up my Facebook. I'm like, wait, no, that's not her name. That's not her name. My apologies for that. And how you doing this evening?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I love your hair.
Thank you. I actually just got it done last week.
Really?
So, very exciting.
It is very on point. I love it.
Thank
It
you.
just screams at me.
Andrew Wesley, he's the one who does my hair all the time.
And you're actually joined tonight with a gentleman right here that I've had the privilege of having dinner with, having an amazing one-on-one meeting, and then having a one-on-one interview with Mr. Boris. And I always mess.
Just Boris.
Just Boris.
I'm at Boris now.
He's like Madonna and shit.
Right.
Thank you for
We're
joining
just
us
at
tonight, Boris. I really do appreciate
Thanks.
it. And it was actually you who reached out to me about 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And anytime that Boris hits me up about something, he doesn't even have to finish. Like I see the bubbles, like the three dots going up and down. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Like I'm in. Whatever you got going
Right.
on, whatever you got planned out, I'm totally in. Let's do this.
I
And
really appreciate that.
you have always had your eye on some pretty cool talent here in Central Florida.
Yeah, and this year in particular, Borma, which is the production company that I have with Marla, is going big. We have Melissa's podcast, and then we have Maxine.
Yes.
Maxine, Let's Get Married in Orlando. We have a theme song. But we're here for Melissa. And so Melissa has been doing the tours, Tom and Dan, Etchy. She's going to be doing Ted Bogart. She's going to be on Tidbits. And now she's here with you.
And I appreciate the opportunity to sit down and talk with you because the idea behind your podcast, well, let's just dive into it.
Right.
What is the premise and what do people expect from What a Day Kids?
Yeah, so What a Day Kids, I am a special ed middle school teacher.
Okay.
That's what I live and breathe and know the most. So that's what this podcast is about.
How long have you been in the field of special needs children?
I've been teaching since 2014.
Okay.
And I worked at a private school and that had a mix of abilities. And then I moved in 2016, I believe,
Okay.
to a public school. And that I just work in a self-contained classroom, and that has all varying exceptionalities. And
So from the private sector down to the public sector.
yeah, exactly.
Do you feel that there's more of I want to properly ask you this question.
Okay.
Do you feel like there's more structure when it comes to a private institution than to a public institution?
I think it depends on the school. So the school that I worked at the private school was called the Ampersand School, and it was very hands-on project-based learning. Mm-hmm. And so I had a mixed grade level class. I had pre-K through 5th grade.
Oh, wow.
I was the elementary school teacher.
I got all the grades, okay?
Right. I can teach everybody. It's great. And it was actually really fun and a really great learning experience to learn how to differentiate learning and how to make projects for kids that worked at a higher level all the way down to the pre-K level. So it was because my kids are all working together doing the same things.
Yeah.
But their expectations were different, or the pre-Ks would be working on writing their titles and making books, whereas the 5th graders are working on the content of their books and stuff like that. And
Okay.
so it just kind of all played together. And then that worked out well when I moved to public school because I teach 6th through 8th grade in one class, and everybody's at a different level in my class.
It's a bit more advanced, but it's more, how would I say, is it easier to
I have
to teach?
more specific things that I have to teach in a public school than I did at the private school. But I
Gotcha.
think that depends on the private school that you're working at. So.
And what was it that like drove you to go into that specific field of teaching?
I really just loved working with those students and figuring out how to make I think the favorite thing of any teacher is like seeing that click of like, oh, I get it now. And like, you know what I mean? Like a kid's like, oh, I understand this. And so my favorite thing was figuring out how to help those kids get that click.
Okay.
And so that was more interesting to me.
You know what the click is for us podcasters? When the guest is good,
Yes.
right? That's the click. That's the click.
No, I will say this. I get probably about 7 to 8 clicks a week working in the law field because I'm not an attorney, but I've been in the field for about 7 years. And anytime I have a question in regards to a case or a law, my attorney breaks it down for me, and she breaks it down to a point where she'll use metaphors, and it's just like right there, click. I'm like, I know what to do now. I'll be right back.
Right.
I don't know if I asked you, are you becoming a lawyer?
I am making the steps. This is the year. This is the year where I make that step forward.
Because I need a good lawyer. Melissa, you too are
But no, with that gratification of like getting the click from the kids, what was it that pushed you from the private school to the public? Because from my experience in public school and growing up in private school, then going to public school, it's a huge change.
Yeah.
In the environment.
Yeah.
And what caused that shift?
That's hard to say because I really enjoyed working at the private school, but the public school came with more benefits, and I think initially that was the reasoning. I was like, oh, I get healthcare. So,
It's a no-brainer at that
right.
point.
But then I really found, specifically at that school, my like pod of people that you like really work well with. Like my first episode is going to be with my teacher cohort. He works in the classroom right next door.
Oh, okay.
And so like he and I have just become really close, and we work super well together. And so I just like found that group that just kind of meshed. And yeah, so.
You know why this podcast, and yeah, I'm in selling mode, but you know why this podcast, I think, is brilliant, and it's really gold, because everybody, well, not everybody, but most people have kids. And this isn't just about kids with learning disabilities, because what Melissa is going to show is that the techniques that she uses on her kids works on neurotypical kids. And by the way, neurotypical is a new word that I've learned, because
I was just about to ask, like, what does that mean?
Saying normal kids is offensive, as opposed to, so you say neurotypical.
So there's a lot of like speak in like education and then out in the world of people who have disabilities. And so I have my own lingo that I've learned from being an educator. And then I've really I try to make sure that I'm following people who have autism and have Down syndrome and are part of that community, because I only know from my perspective, I don't know what it's like to actually have autism or actually have Down syndrome. And so I try to do a lot of that. And so what I found is the most least harmful way is neurotypical and neurodiverse.
And like, what's the big difference right there with those two?
So neurotypical would be like how a typical brain works.
Okay.
And then neurodiverse would be
Her students.
a different way for a brain to work.
Okay.
In those cases, one's not more normal or abnormal or
And I never
more
thought
important
about
or
that.
less important.
And it's funny you just said that right there. Like, there's not a lot of awareness out there. Throughout in this country, in this day and age, we're getting, forgive me for saying it like this, spoon-fed awareness on things that we should have been aware about long time ago.
Right.
But there are so many subjects and so many areas of life that just gets overlooked because of, and forgive me for saying it like this, the court of public opinion boosts certain things above others. And it's a shame because actually about 2 weeks ago I sat down with AJ Wilkerson. He is a national touring comedian, but the one thing is he is an autistic comedian.
Oh.
And it exactly my first
Yeah.
my first response when I first saw him, and he had made that claim. I thought he was joking, but then I'm like, who makes a joke like that?
Right.
And when he dove into like the struggles and the benefits and just everything around the spectrum behind autism, I'm like, I didn't even know spectrum had an autism. I mean, the
Autism had a
spectrum. You see
Yeah.
that? That's my dyslexia coming in right there.
No, you know
I
what's
understood what you
interesting is that so we've done several big appearances. Well, she has done several big appearances, and what we're beginning to find out is that some hosts are not as sensitive as others, and things were said on one podcast that caused controversy immediately after people were contacting her on her Facebook page because there's no one in Orlando that represents these kids. It's turning out to be Melissa now.
Wow.
And they were asking her for,
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, it's a giant learning curve, and unless you're a part of that community in some way, why would you be thinking about that, right? So,
Yeah. I didn't
yeah.
even know at one point that there's a debate or I don't want to say argument in regards to the symbol for autism, whether it's the puzzle piece or
The infinity symbol.
the infinity symbol. Like, and when we dove into that, I'm like, wow, I blew my mind right there.
Right.
But from what you're telling me right there in regards to like causing a little bit of controversy right there, the two gentlemen that you spoke with, they're amazing, they're well talented, well connected with the
absolutely.
community, and an amazing reach. But the one thing is they push the envelope a
Yeah.
lot, and I try my best. That's why I asked you when we messaged each other on Facebook the other
Yeah.
day, like, what will you not talk about? Because that right there, and I asked that I asked that
Yeah.
to you. I asked that to all my guests because I don't want you to feel uncomfortable
Right.
when we talk. Because
yeah, but you know what? It's like podcasting 101. Don't make fun of people's disabilities.
Oh, no.
Don't make comments about race, gender. I mean, it happens.
Oh, totally.
But I think the way the world is going now, with people being canceled and silenced and moved off the stage, you know, it's kind of an awakening on many levels. I'm not big on canceling either, but if you're going to say something stupid, there's a price, and this is what we experience.
Well, it also worked out though because now I've had families reach out that were like,
Yes,
"Hey,
absolutely.
I didn't appreciate this," and I was like, "I totally understand. It's hard for me being in a situation that I've never been in, and you only have a certain amount of time, and how much can you teach and direct in that amount of time? But like, hey, I'm here. I'd love to hear your thoughts." And I've had two families reach out and ask if questions just in general about like different school stuff and everything, and I've tried to point them in the right direction. So that's
do
been
you
cool.
feel that the platform that you're about to begin is going to be more of an awareness, a learning curve, or just like shedding light on? And I know they kind of all sound the same.
Both, yeah. So the way that we set this up is the beginning will be like me talking about anecdotes from the day, funny stuff that happens in my class because my kids are funny. They're smart, they're funny, and they tell jokes all the time. And we're always laughing. And so I kind of want to shed that light. That way it's not always feeling like, oh, this is just so serious. And because a lot of it can be very serious, and there's a lot of serious stuff that needs to be talked about.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I also don't want it to just be like, oh, we're always so serious all the time. That's not my life. I have pink hair. Like, I am not serious all
Right,
the
and
time.
I work at a law firm and I have a hand tattoo. I
Right.
totally get it.
And when, you know, and I don't know if I told you, she used to be my student 25 years ago, and I taught Spanish and sign language. And there was a lady that used to come in, the lady that taught me sign language, who was deaf, but she could speak, and she read lips. And she would tell them all the time, the students, you know, when you see a deaf person, don't look away. Use your little bit of sign language. Come up and say, hi, my name is, include me. Because I have seen back then, and this was in early 2000s, I was at the mall, there were two deaf people signing, and one of my students was staring, and they didn't know I was there, the parents, and the mother grabbed and said, that's not, you're not supposed to do that, you know, I mean, we have a way as a society to take the people that we should be including and we exclude them because we don't want to hurt their feelings, And I think this is what you're doing, making sure that that
Right.
doesn't happen.
Yeah, and so then I also talk to another teacher or parent or school admin or psychologist, and then at the end, I'm most excited because I talk to one of my students and I have them be on the show, and I
Really?
include them as a part of the conversation because it's about them.
Yeah.
And so instead of just talking about or over them, having them be a part of the conversation, which I think is so important when you're talking about disabilities in any situation.
Now, the term, and I'm gonna give a little bit of a spiel on this one. They say those that can't play coach, and those that can't do teach. I always found funny because I tend to hold the teachers that I've had in my life at high esteem. I still stay in contact with the majority of them because they played a huge role in my life with the understanding of government, the understanding of the English language itself, the appreciation for history and art, and what was for you, Melissa, the teacher that inspired you to go down this path?
Oh, wow. I had a lot of amazing teachers. Obviously, Boris is one of them. I actually use the Spanish.
Let's pretend Boris isn't here.
Right?
Boris ain't here.
I do use the Spanish and sign language that he taught me in my classroom because I have ESOL students or I have students that have limited.
What is ESOL?
English
is the second language.
Yeah. And then I have students that have limited verbal speaking skills. And so we do a lot of simple signs and stuff like that in class. And that I only know those because of Boris. So that's been super helpful. I mean, my band teacher in middle school and high school, they were both incredibly influential in my life. I never wanted to be a teacher, so I couldn't say that any.
That's my story too.
I never, so I had people.
Running
in
a
my
gallery
whole life.
doesn't like art.
There we go.
So I can't say that any teacher really was oh, because of you, I want to be a teacher now. That was never my experience, but I just had really great people in my life. I feel in every grade, I can tell you exactly who taught me in every single grade level because they were all influential and for some reason.
Yeah.
But
That's
were any of them making me be a teacher? No.
For me, it's the opposite. When I came to this country, I didn't speak English. I was very shy. I had terrible acne. I was just coming to terms with the fact that I might be gay. And I had teachers that were forcing me to read at the front of the class because they felt that would be good for me. That would help me break my shyness. And I was like, I can barely speak English. They're going to beat me up afterwards. It's there are very few teachers, very few that I feel helped me. You were not in that situation, obviously.
No.
And this is what we actually talked about last time, that there's a difference with the generation gaps. I remember that same procedure where stand up, read in front of the class and everything.
Right.
Nowadays, since we've been able to identify certain whether it's disabilities, handicaps, what have you, or the way people just process information, that's frowned upon now. You don't want to put the child up front in front of everybody, especially if they're an introvert.
Right.
Exactly.
The one thing I wanted to go down with you, Melissa, was the fact that teachers have to have patience to deal with their students.
Yeah.
But the fact that you work with special needs children, that's a different level.
I mean, I guess so. So for me, that's just my life, right? And I get told all the time, "Oh, how did you know how to do that?" And I'm like, that's just what made sense. I don't know. Experience,
Exactly.
probably.
And I'm asking this question because that's
because I feel like I'm not overly patient. I'm sure that I am.
But are you patient in your job and not so patient outside of your job?
No, I think I'm patient. People have told me that I'm very patient, so I must be,
Well,
right?
with me, you're patient as hell.
I must be if people are perceiving that.
Yeah.
But I don't think I don't think so much about it. It's just oh, well, I can see that you're having a hard time, or you need extra time for this, or we have to do this. And so I can kind of see all those paths, and then I'm well, then why would I get upset with you if
Yeah.
I know what's going on. Like,
Having an understanding of the situation
Right.
and the individual that you're working with.
right.
Teachers nowadays get a bum rep. Teachers nowadays, well, forever, have been extremely underpaid, and they're the ones who are actually molding the citizens of this society.
Yeah, but listen, I hope I'm not going to say the wrong thing, but I have mixed feelings about that because I had good teachers and bad
Oh,
teachers.
same, 100%.
And it's very difficult to get rid of the bad teachers in the system. Once you're in the system, it's like a bad priest. They move you to another school, you know? I mean,
Not
Well,
the best
they don't
analogy.
have tenure anymore. That's not a thing. So there are teachers who are tenured, but they stopped that process. So now that's not.
so what happens now if there's a terrible teacher? They just let them go?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of teachers get fired.
Well, then,
That
okay, I'm
made-
happy now.
That made sense. It made. I was like, I get it.
No, I actually had an experience one time, and I remember this. I was talking to someone who had gone to elementary school about this the other day, where in fourth grade, I had just dealt with a loss in the family, and I was behind a lot of stuff, and I was just slacking.
Yeah.
And out of nowhere, the teacher came, like, pulled me aside and straight up like this was like, "You are the worst student I've ever had."
Oh, God.
What?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh no.
Wow.
When you say like there are good and bad teachers,
Oh, yeah.
I get that 100%.
Well, to fourth grade you, I'm really sorry that happened.
No,
Thank you
shoot,
so
yeah.
It was a bit of a shocker, and I didn't tell anybody that because
Because you just believe it at that point. Like, what else are you gonna think?
I believe
I
it.
must be the worst student.
You know, my story, obviously, as in the documentary, they held my head in a toilet, they flushed it, they beat me up, blah, blah, blah. And I go to a teacher, and, you know, she said to me, "Oh, Boris, you have to be strong. You have to go through this. Not, let's go to the principal, let's call the police, let's call the media, you know." But to me, it
One
seems
tweet
like
will do that nowadays.
Oh, yeah.
it sounds almost what happened to you would hurt me more. When an adult looks at you and says, "You're the worst ever," that stays in you. That have gotten to have hurt you psychologically.
Oh, it did. And I've mentioned this on the show before. As a child, I had to go through anger management. I went through therapy. I went through so much, mental assistance because I know I wasn't right. I had accepted it at a young age, and I had tried my best to find the normal or what society thought was a normal. Now, with what you deal with in the classroom, to society, it's not the normal.
Right.
To you and your kids, this is your everyday life.
Right.
What pushes you through the day to just instill to them like it's a different world out there?
I don't think that I really let them know that it's a different world. If anything, I try to teach the world how to interact with them.
Which is what she's doing.
Yeah.
Right. So I wouldn't say that I'm like, hey, people are going to be mean to you, because they shouldn't be.
They shouldn't.
Right. So instead, we do a lot with we have peer tutors who come into our classroom, and they help they're like another assistant in my class, and so they get to know the students. They'll be in PE and on different art electives and things like that, where they're in a class with other students, and so everybody gets to kind of see how to interact with them, and because they love talking to everybody. And so I don't want to be like, "Oh, you can't talk to them because they're going to be mean." No, go talk to them. And if they're mean, then you come tell me. And I'll help teach those kids how to interact.
With you being the new generation of teachers, has there been a change in the methods of teaching from what you experienced as a student?
I mean, I would say as a majority, yes. I think we have a lot of empathetic teachers. I would say, I mean, I can only speak for the teachers that I know,
Yeah.
and
Not the ones that call little Patricio the worst
Right.
student
Oh,
ever.
dear Lord. I can't get over that. That's terrible.
he is not. I don't know. Is it a he?
Was it a...
No, it was a she.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I don't know why
Your
I
camp.
assumed.
Your camp.
I should not have assumed. My apologies to all the male teachers. No, I think that there's a lot of empathy and a lot of alertness of, okay, building relationships with students. That's number one. You can't teach kids if they don't care about your class or you in some way. And if you're not showing that you care about them, they're not going to care about you.
Wow, that's a fair assessment.
Do your students know that they're different?
I think some of them do, but I don't see any of that, which I love. Because
But isn't it part of you preparing them for, like what he said, that it's not nice out there?
no.
But I feel that from being a product of a kid of the 90s, there's a new approach of society towards individuals of mental disabilities. To some extent, there were, and then the thing is, like we're able to identify certain, whether it's handicap or disabilities, more now than we were back then. Someone who had may have had a level of autism back in the mid 90s, that wasn't identified until probably in adulthood.
Right.
And people are uncomfortable admitting they have mental illness. Like, I have depression, I have ADHD, OCD. I'm sorry, that's mental illness. It's like mental illness has a spectrum as well.
Yeah.
But people are not comfortable with those terms. And I'm sure people. I don't know. When I was at Kenworthy, so I'm just going to say wonderful school, but some of the students, I felt that. I can't go on with this conversation. Sorry. Now that I said the school, I can't say no. But Kenworthy was good. How are parents of these students? Are some of them uncomfortable having a child that is like that? I think that's the whole thing I was trying to get at.
Well, I'm not a parent of a special needs child, and I can only know a glimpse of what that life is like. I can't imagine that it is always easy. And I am 100% sure it's not. But do I think that any of my parents feel bad about the fact that they have it? No, I don't think so. There's going to be struggles all the time, but there's struggles all the time parenting in general.
Yeah, I will attest to that because working in the legal field, especially in family law, we've dealt with some, forgive me for saying it like this, some piece of shit people out there.
Right.
And in regards to one other parent not being supportive or just being available to their child, especially when one of the factors is mental health or a handicap, there are people out there that just don't want to be there.
Right.
And it's really sad because.
But I feel like that's just with parenting in general, not necessarily just.
Oh no,
Yeah.
100%. Like that,
Yeah.
and that goes across the spectrum. That goes,
Yeah.
we got some bad parents on all types of kids.
Yeah.
And it's just, I'll just repeat myself. It's just sad that exists out there. But with your factor in that child's life, you're not only offering but a safety net, but positivity and reinforcement, and also like you're helping the development of that child's brain
Right.
into becoming a contributing member of society.
Well, what she is doing with this podcast is she's introducing people to those children we hear about but never see or hear. And, we are afraid and uncomfortable with the things we don't know.
No, of course.
And that's where I think you're going to do the best thing, because I'm almost hoping that this show goes where I want it to be, and people want to hear it because they want to hear the success stories. They want to hear that a neurotypical and a neurodivergent child, they can work together, they can be friends. I don't see
absolutely.
any of that in the media. And Patricio, what we have we have learned is when we did research for this podcast, there are podcasts for teachers, but there is not a podcast by a teacher that talks on a daily basis about his or her experiences with children.
Yeah.
And the children, again, you never get to hear them. We get to hear them on this program.
That's amazing. That's going to give like a more in-depth
Absolutely.
perspective, and the fact that we're hearing about it. I remember that in one of your posts, it was the trials and triumphs of a special needs teacher.
Yeah.
Could we dive into that a little bit in
Sure.
regards to like the trials and triumphs?
Well, you can tell those stories that always upset me.
Let's give them some tissues
Right.
first before we go down that road.
No, not upset that way. Just
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to also mention I have really, really wonderful parents that work with this year and I've had for years.
Oh, parents of the kids.
Yeah, of my
okay,
kids.
I'm like,
No, I mean, my parents are wonderful
yeah.
too, but hi, Mom. No, of my students, I still am in contact with a lot of my families that have either moved or go to high school. And so I've been so lucky, and that I have just wonderful, supportive parents. We collaborate a lot together on what's going on at home, what's going on at school, and how we can work together to make things happen. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I don't want people to think that I think that they're not doing a great job, because they are.
well, no, in the learning and the teaching aspect, I mean, it's a two-way street. Not only just the teacher at home, but and making sure that the parent at home is like, hey, do your homework, do this. Let me see how I can help you out.
Right. Well, and there's also like stuff that'll happen at home, and then it'll like different routines. Something I remember, one of my families, they had a guest that was staying with them for 2 weeks, and they were staying in their son's room, and that son is very like has autism and is very routine based. And so every time that it was time to get on the bus to go home, he had a big meltdown. And I'm like, why is this happening? Like, is there something going on at home? And Mom's like, no, nothing's going on. And which, why would you think that, right? Like, I'm sure this person has stayed with them for several times. And so I was like, okay. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, what is it about getting on the bus? Is there somebody on the bus that's bothering you? Like, what's going on?
You're playing detective at this point.
Yes. And then finally she's like, oh, somebody's staying with me and they're sleeping in his room. And I was like, okay, I found it. This is it. And so just like knowing those things that are happening at home, then I can be like, okay, then I can prepare him throughout the school day that this is what's going to happen when it's time to go home, when you get home, and then it's a much easier transition as opposed to just like, okay, it's time to go home, and then like, no.
I'm listening to this, and I have to be careful because this is my second podcast that I've created, and I'm listening to Melissa talk, and I don't know if you can feel it, but this is important. This is actually something that's causing social change. When I had my first podcast with Chris, I expected it to be funny on many levels, and I could jump right in. But here, I feel myself saying, no, don't say that, don't go there, be careful, because I don't want in any way or form to be in the way of this force of nature that we are unleashing.
No. I totally understand that, and it's forgive me for saying it like this, the spectrum of the podcast world, because depending on the host or the style of show, you know me, Boris.
Right.
I talk with everybody.
Right.
Just like I said, last week it was the autistic comic. This week I'm talking to a special needs teacher. Next week I'm talking to a DJ who's doing a EDM festival down in Tampa. So like I'm all over the place when it comes to this. So the curveballs that are coming from the individual, like from you right now, like I'm feeling the passion. I'm feeling the energy and the love behind of what you're doing right now, and the fact that it's being put into a podcast, that's going to be amazing, because you're going to give a perspective that not everyone sees, not everyone is privy to, because for some parents, and once again, forgive me for saying this, they drop off their kids and they're gone. They're not there the whole day. You're there with them on the most important hours of the day to teach them, to be with them, to take care of them. And then at the end of the day, the parent comes with the car. Okay, come on, little Johnny, get in the car. We got to go. You witness a lot more. And I'm sure you have a much more deeper connection to an extent than the parents do with some of these kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't want to say that I have like a deeper connection than their parents because
But it's a
obviously
profound connection.
Yes, I have very deep connections with my children, like, and that just really comes into getting to know each of them. I spend the first month of school. I mean, we're doing learning, but not like we're sitting down and learning. I just sit with them and I really just play with them, see what they like,
You're getting
what they
your foot in
don't
the water.
like. Right. And I just really spend a lot of time getting to know them, getting to know how they communicate, getting to know their likes, their needs. Like some of my kids really like deep pressure. Some of my kids do not. And so like, what is it that you need when you're upset? How to calm down so then I can teach them those strategies to help them calm themselves down. So I spend a lot of time getting to know my kids, and they know that. Like I remember I had one kid, I became the teacher of the classroom his final year in middle school, and he had kind of like skated through. And
That was me in 4th grade.
right. His like goals and stuff that he had to work on had not changed very much, and that can be pretty common. Like that's fine. Sometimes we just need a lot of extra help working on things, and that's
Yeah.
okay too. But I knew that he knew how to do those things. And so I remember one day I looked at him because I'm sure he was just bored. He was like, I know my colors, ma'am. Like, let's go.
Yeah.
But I'm like, but you have to show me you know your colors. So I remember I looked at him and I was like, hey, I know that you know this. And if you show me you know this, then we can move on and do stuff that you actually find interesting. And guess what happened? He like breezed through everything. And I was like, you're so smart. He was like, I know. And I was just waiting for somebody to be like, yeah, bro, you know this. Like, it's fine. And I remember that year he had been, we do like the state testing, but it's, my kids take an alternate assessment. So it's still a state test. It's just more at their level. And he went from scoring level 1s on everything to passing at level 3s in 1 year.
I didn't know that there was state required examinations
Oh, yeah,
for special needs.
for everybody. Yeah.
Really?
They take a different test.
Of course.
But they still take a test because they have to know that I'm doing my job.
Oh, fair and valid. That Winston teacher, they're just finger painting. They're fine.
Right.
One thing that we're doing with her show is we're only doing 10 episodes for season 1
Okay.
because it's so much work, segments, but these episodes will definitely be replayed because they're filled with useful information. The middle segment is where she talks to a professional, a teacher, a parent, where she talks about the techniques that she uses with her students. And the idea is if they work with her students, they will work with a neurotypical kid, for sure. You know, and to me, that's gold.
No, 100%.
That's gold.
My favorite one is teaching kids how to do deep breathing, because usually if you tell a kid to deep breathe, they're like with their mouth, and that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to breathe in with their nose and then breathe out with your
Where
mouth.
were you earlier today when my watch told me to take a breathing
Mine
exercise?
does that too.
Well, listen to this. This is brilliant.
So I will cut out a piece of paper and we'll make a pizza, and so you smell the pizza and then blow on it to cool it off.
See?
Right? Genius.
Wow.
Yes.
Holy crap.
So now my kids, I'm like, let's do some pizza breathing, and they'll like hold their hands up now instead of the paper, and they'll just be like, right?
Wow. Wow.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm glad I could help. See, for everybody.
There's a click. That's the click.
Exactly.
That's what I live for.
What? No, seriously. I do a little bit of yoga. I'll put like some relaxing music in.
Yeah.
I thought I'm this years old when I realized how to properly breathe. There was actually a meme I saw this week it was a comedy sketch video where this gentleman is just walking funny in a warehouse, and his coworker goes up to him. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I know this is gonna sound stupid, but sometimes I forget things, and I forgot how to walk." So he's like, "Well, how did you forget how to walk? That's impossible." He's like, "Okay, then you do it." Then of course his coworker's like freezes.
Because you're overthinking
You're
it.
overthinking it, and then he just starts walking funny because like, wait a second, dude, I'm getting this wrong. I'm getting this
Right.
wrong, and they scream out to another coworker. He's like, "Shut up! I already heard you guys. I'm trying to figure this out too." And I guess in this day and age now, we do tend to overthink a lot of things. And with your field, how is like the day-to-day interactions with the children? Like, is there overthinking, or is there like a smooth
Oh, yeah.
curriculum?
No, I mean, I overthink a lot of things just myself as a teacher. And I mean, I think that's every teacher though, because you're trying to like, okay, I'm working with this group. What is this group doing? I'm keeping my eye on this kid because he's getting close to this kid and they don't always get along. And so like, I'm constantly doing all of these things while I'm like, okay, 2 + 2 is what? Right? And so it's just like, I'm all looking at everything. And
Yeah.
when they grade us, they call that with itness.
With it.
With it.
Are you with it? But I'm constantly thinking about all of these things, all of these things, all of these things. And so sometimes, you know what? I'm like, listen, and I think it's important that I let my kids know when I'm feeling what I like to call big emotions.
Yeah.
Big emotions. That way they know that it's okay, right? And
Yeah.
And so I'd be like, okay, Miss Winston just really needs a break because her brain has been thinking too much.
Yeah.
And so I say, we're all just going to take 5 minutes. You can do whatever you want. I mean, within reason, right? Whatever you want. They know the rules. Whatever you want with it for 5 minutes. And I'm going to put on some classical music and I'm going to sit here. I'm still going to watch them and
Of
make sure
course,
they're
of
okay.
course.
But I'm not going to do any teaching. I'm not going to do anything. And just so that they know that sometimes I need that time too. That way, when I see that they're overwhelmed, I can say, hey, remember when Miss Winston had to take a break? Do you need to go take a break? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, great.
That's
Go ahead.
That's a really cool approach.
Well, and that, I don't know. I don't know what age group. I realize my parents are not gods; they're humans, and I think we look at our parents when we're younger as they're not stressed, they're not depressed, they're not sad. And in a way,
Yeah.
you're teaching them adults have this too,
Yeah.
which makes them more empathetic to their own home situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And because a lot of what we have to do too is teach, just like when you have a little kid, you have to teach them what emotions
Yeah.
they're feeling or seeing. And so that's a big thing. Like, hey, you look like you're mad because you're throwing a chair, you're hitting the desk.
Yeah.
And like exact things that mad people do. That way they're like, oh, when I see this or when I do this, I must be mad.
You see, and this is exactly what I want to talk about a little bit in regards to how teaching has evolved over the past just like 20 years. And not only teaching, but parenting itself, because as a child, I remember, maybe I would throw a tantrum or I was sad. What did I get? I either got the belt, the chancla, the hand,
Really?
or stop being
Chancla.
sad. Stop being sad. And as a child, when I was told that, I'm like,
But
Oh.
how?
how do I stop being sad? So a lot of times I basically just like, and of course my mom would say, stop crying, stop crying. So then, in fear of being hit, I would wipe the tears, take it in, and I'm like, okay, I'm done crying. And I would be basically suppressing my emotions
hide it.
and my feelings.
But it's even worse than that, because then you probably also heard boys don't cry.
Yes.
Which basically means men can't show emotions. And then men get together with women. Women have been told to be as emotional as hell. And you have these relationships that once the passion has kind of settled, you're like, you can't talk to each other because we've been trained not to show our emotions. And it must be very upsetting to their female partners,
My husband shows a lot of emotions.
And then that's actually where I was going to correct right there, because as I got older and my mom started, my mother was very blunt with me. Now, being a single mother, because my father left when I was 2 months old, she did everything on her own.
Right.
So there were things like she didn't know. I was her firstborn. You're like, how do I do
Yeah.
this? There's no Google
She's
at that time.
figuring out how to be a parent just like you're figuring out how to be a kid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where, as I was older and began to understand more and more, was then when she started explaining to me, hey, I did this because of this. We did this because of that. And like she explained it and broke it down to me to a point like, okay, so you weren't evil. You just didn't know what you were doing.
Right.
And I accepted it and I understand it and I moved on to the point where, like, as the generations grew and we got older, I was now understanding what emotions were, what feelings were.
But that conversation that she had with you is really important, because that's similar to like the things that I'm doing in my classroom, which is like teaching emotions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, hey, guess what? I mess up all the time. I was wrong. Like, I taught that lesson yesterday totally wrong. Just forget everything that I did. Or, hey, my voice got louder than I meant it to. And I'm really sorry. Like apologizing, having those conversations. I was feeling frustrated because blah, blah, blah. Right? And then that is so important. So the fact that she had that conversation, that way you weren't just going through your life going like, I don't know,
like now I'll cry at a Disney movie.
Right.
At 30, 35 years old, there'll be a scene and I'm just like, I don't care.
Do you think you have a lot of repressed emotions? And by the way, I wanted to ask, do you have a relationship with your father?
No, I don't have my biological father. I don't. And I think I told you the story where I gave him the opportunity. I found him when I was 15
Okay.
to
No, I don't think you
come
told
talk
me.
with me. I'll sum this up quick. I found him when I was 15. My mom gave me a little bit of information. Went up to his house, knocked on the door, and I'm like, "Hey, I am so and so's son. I just want to talk with you. I don't want money. I don't want anything. I just want to talk with you. I'm going to be at the bench at the park right across the street till 4:30. If you don't show up, you'll never hear from me ever again." I waited till 4:35.
Jesus.
He never came.
Wow.
And at that point, and that's actually almost around the same time where my mother and I had to talk about
Yeah.
emotions, because I didn't know how to process that feeling.
Right.
No, that's brutal.
And that's a big feeling.
Oh, yeah. Just like when I was told I was the worst student back in fourth grade.
Right. Those are big emotions.
Those are big strikes in your psychological profile.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine.
It's a meme where like everything's on fire.
Oh,
and
there's
the
a
guy's
cup.
like just like, I'm fine. Everything's fine.
Everything's great.
But as we're almost near the hour mark,
Yeah.
and I want to dive in a little bit more because, like I said, it's a podcast that I've never heard that premise before, and I'm
Thank
excited.
you.
I'm excited to listen to it because of anytime, like I said, Boris has a nick for finding amazing talent and just harnessing whatever chaotic energy they have into an amazing product. So with you being at the helm of this podcast, like what is your goal with the show?
My goal is really to uplift the voices of my students and other people with a learning disability or different neurodiverse people. Because I know a lot about teaching, but I don't know what it's like to be neurodiverse. And so I don't want to just be talking about people or about how to handle them. I want them to be heard and for people to get to know them. They're so amazing. They're so loving. They have all the range of emotions that we all have. I have a phrase that I use a lot in my classroom is we can be mad, but we can't be mean.
Fair.
Right?
I'm gonna send that to my girlfriend tonight.
Oh,
So we all have a lot of emotions. They're so smart. They're so funny. I have kids that like love math so much that on their breaks they'll come up to my whiteboard and they'll just make up these math problems to do, and they'll be like, "Am I right?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're doing great." Or, "No, you need to do this." And they're just really great.
Now you're not just any sort of teacher. Like you have a degree.
I mean, I have a a degree in psychology.
In psychology. Okay.
And then I went and got my teaching certificate.
Okay. So yeah, you're going in with a well understanding of the human mind and psyche.
Right. That's interesting to me. So yeah.
This is fascinating to me, this whole thing, because I'm learning not weird, but interesting things. For example, in that world, if that's the correct world of special needs and stuff like that, there are individuals who have special needs, who have podcasts, and are Instagram stars with 500,000 followers. And one of them came to Melissa, a TikTok star, who has 500,000 followers, and she's going to be on your show, right?
Yeah, so shout out to Abigail the Advocate.
Oh, nice.
She came to Marla E's show, Art is Everywhere,
Which
I
she
got to
curated, yeah.
co-curate,
And it's on
yes.
till May at Mills Gallery, 1650 North Mills.
There'll be more events for that soon.
Yeah.
But Marla had been her art teacher at the school that she had gone to.
Oh, okay.
And
Small world.
right, and so she ended up there, and then my podcast was brought up, and so her mom came up, was like, "Oh, here's Abigail," and Abigail's this really awesome girl with Down syndrome, and she's training to be in a triathlon. I just saw on her on her TikTok, she just swam 900 yards in open water, and I'm like, wow, girl, good for you. I could never do, if I tried, I'm sure I could, and you would tell me that because she is so positive.
No, and there was actually a really cool milestone in the world. I believe the young individual had Down syndrome, where he had this year alone, he just finished. He was the first person with Down syndrome to finish the Ironman competition.
Yes, I saw that.
And
how cool!
That blew my mind because it's here in Central Florida, and that's actually the premise. Because like you had said, your premise of your show. My premise is to put the magnifying glass on Central Florida to show that we're more than just theme parks.
Right.
There's so much creativity. There's so much diversity here in Central Florida that just gets overlooked by the new Raptor ride at Universal Studios coming this summer. I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
But it affects all industries.
Well,
it affects my industry too. You know? Yeah.
It's really funny because I have TikTok, and who doesn't at this point?
I don't.
Oh, well,
You'll give in.
but I have followed her on TikTok, and I had no idea that she lived in Orlando. And then all of a sudden she comes up, and I'm like, I know you. I was fangirling. I was like, oh my gosh, I follow you on TikTok. And she was like, hot pink is my favorite color. And I was like, oh, great. So now we're best friends. It's fine. I'm very excited for her to come on the show and interview her. I think that'll be super fun.
You know what I just realized right now? This is interesting. I think before I knew Melissa, before I was involved in all this, I always thought of those students, those schools, as a sad situation. And now through Melissa, I'm finding out there's so much joy, so much humor. There's celebrities.
I am guilty of the same thought process.
Yeah.
I will say that as an individual who went to a school that had
A self-contained class.
Yeah. For individuals like that, I looked away. I didn't
Exactly.
I didn't want to address it or be aware of it because
You didn't know how.
I didn't know how.
Right.
And that's what we're learning.
Yeah.
We're going to learn. We're learning neurotypical.
Exactly.
Don't use normal.
Exactly.
That makes a kid that is not neurotypical feel bad. And obviously don't say the R word, for God's sakes.
Oh,
you
no,
know.
no.
Oh yeah, no.
You'll get
Yeah.
world of hurt.
Death of a career, yeah.
I will be very angry.
But I hear that word on podcasts.
It does come
all
out.
It's
the
hard to
time.
get out of it because it became such a part of the language just in general.
In a sense, it kind of got grandfathered in, and we're still
right.
trying to get it out of here.
Right.
This is the new generation. This is the woke generation, and to some extent, yes, the cancel culture itself. There are some good things that are being canceled, but at the same time, there are things that shouldn't have even gotten to where they're at.
Absolutely.
At this point.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
my biggest thing is if you hear somebody say it, just call them out on it. Be like,
Yeah.
hey, that's not cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't need to be saying that anymore. There are other words to use.
Oh no, I'll give you this one, and I know for a fact I'm gonna stir a little bit of the pot right now.
Oops.
I'd gone to WrestleMania over the weekend. A friend of mine hit me up. He's like, "Hey, I got a ticket." I'm like, I'm already there. I'm on my
Right.
way. And the next day, I'm excited because we got some great pictures, posting with my friend, and just saying, had an amazing time at WrestleMania. And then one individual just put out gay.
Oh, I was just about to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, I get the air quote joke.
It's like, how old are we now? Right?
But
Like-
exactly. I'm like, and here the thing is, the individual who said that is older than me.
Right.
So of course that was a factor that I processed. But then I called him out. I'm like, what's gay about it? He was like, oh no, it's just a joke. Well,
It's not funny.
What's
It's just not
what's
funny.
the joke?
Right.
Where's the punchline? You just exclaimed the word gay because I had posted that I was at a wrestling event. Are you saying that the action of wrestling is gay? Is the me posting photos gay? Like what is it? Please inform me. Radio silence, because everyone's got trigger fingers on Twitter and Facebook, but they never have a mouth to back it up.
Well, and the thing is, I personally, when as an openly gay man, and I hear the F word or people say gay stuff, like Melissa, I'm not there to castigate them, to chastise you. I'm like, that's really not cool.
Yeah.
Especially when they're younger, when they're kids in the room.
Yeah.
And I think when you are young, it's easier to forgive somebody saying the R word or the F word or whatever.
Because their brains are still developing.
Right, but when you're 16 and older,
You
and
gotta
you're
be held accountable.
neurotypical, then it's not so cool.
Well, I mean, I just let everybody know, regardless, right? If you don't know, you don't know,
Right.
right? And so I know that sorry, husband. When I first met my husband, he had said that, and I was like, hey, you know what? I don't like that. Please don't say that. And we got into a conversation about like what it means and like why it's not cool, and like I explained to him. He was like, well, I don't mean it for that, and I'm 90% of people aren't using that word.
Using but the R word?
Yeah.
After talking with Melissa, I looked up the history of the word, and it was a valid word. It was not an insult word. It was a word used to describe people who hadn't developed fully. Right?
Well, like in music, like it means to like slow down and
Yeah.
do all these things, and that's kind of what I explained. I'm like,
Yeah.
so you're calling somebody slow.
Yeah.
Why would that not be offensive?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, because then are people with lower IQs, are they slower? Are they, because now and then he was like, oh, that makes total sense. And now he calls out people. And it's wonderful, because I don't have to
No,
anymore.
and I-
he just does it for me.
I will say this. I actually find it pleasing when someone calls me out because of the fact that, look, I'm 35 years old. I'm a 90s kid, Gen X, whatever you want to call it. I come from a different generation, and the young comics that I talk with and podcast with nowadays like are in their early or mid 20s, and it's a different thought process because they didn't see what I saw, and of course now I don't see what they see in this generation.
Right.
And it's going to be, so on and so forth. Just, the baby boomer generation to the 90s kids, things like that. And I appreciate it when someone calls me out, because not only am I learning something, but it's someone who actually cares so much about something that they're taking the time out of their life
Right.
to be like, hey, listen, bro, I love you, but that's not cool.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I'm really excited to hear your first show. Which when is the release for the first
we are
episode?
hoping for late April, but it's going to be around that time. But also, even though this is competition, this show is being produced by Etchy.
Yeah.
And Etchy does not do this. And when he met Melissa and you heard the concept, he said, I want to be part of this, and he is hands-in involved. I mean,
He's the one editing it for
yeah,
me.
I know you don't know much about the podcasting world, but he's
Must be
royalty.
Nice to have someone editing your own
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
Must
No,
be
I sit there and I go,
effing
I'm so sorry you have to listen to all of this. Because I'll just like laugh. Or when I have my students on, we'll just be telling jokes, and on our soundboard thing, it has like that but-um-tsh. So they love pressing that, and so I'll just be like, sorry, you have 7 minutes of but-um-tsh. Like, feel free to fast forward. So
I'm super proud of this concept. I think this is going to be something that's going to be healing, you know? My first program was just about an idea, Chris talking to guests and being openly vulnerable about the fact that he lacked formal education, blah, blah, blah. But this is a completely different thing. I'm starting with an expert that is here becoming an advocate for children with disability, for fellow teachers, and then for parents. And that's what happened when the parents were contacting you. I read those things. They said, I don't know what to do.
Right.
I don't know where to go for help.
Yeah, just resources, really.
Yeah.
That's they reached out after the.
Well, that's actually always like one of the most difficult things for someone to do
Yeah.
is to actually ask for help.
Right.
And I've always pushed with my friends to like I try to be as open as possible. The first time we met, I think I just laid it all out on the table for you because that's just the way I am. And with just asking for help, I mean, it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of like you trusted me enough to ask me for help.
It's okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
They make an appearance on every show that I produced.
Hey.
I love it.
But no, what you're doing is amazing. I look forward to seeing you blow up in the podcast community here in Central Florida. Anything that with the Side of Chaos or the Chaos Network itself to help you expand and reach the people that you need to reach, by all means, I am at your disposal. If Boris believes in you, then that's good enough for me right there.
Wow, I
But
appreciate that.
you've met her. You've heard this. You believe in this
I,
too now.
I believe in it 100%.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to hear this because I'm a dum-dum to what you work with what your
Yeah.
product is. I don't know
Right.
the
It's
spectrums.
a huge learning curve. Yeah.
I don't know those spectrums. I don't know the levels. I don't know the types of handicaps and disabilities there are out there. And I always try to inform myself or just get as much knowledge about as much of everything that I can because
Yeah.
hey, I do a podcast. I need to be smart.
No, and another thing, again, see, I think about good things while I'm with you. Another thing that she's doing, I didn't even think about this, you're also educating the media. Because now after that experience, you realize they might not know what to say themselves,
Right.
you know.
I think that's a huge thing. The more you learn, the more you're able to grow and know. And I think a lot of people don't know how to.
And there is a difference between not knowing and saying something completely insensitive as a punchline.
100%. 100%. And I've gone on record in apologizing because I do tend to push the envelope. I do tend to cross the line on a lot of topics, whether it's politics, religion, civil rights. Like
I've heard your show, and what you are is you're fearless and you're fascinating. But I don't hear you attacking people that are weak or not able to defend themselves.
that's
just not who you are.
That's not a fair fight.
Yeah.
Like
Well, that's not a fight at all, actually.
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's not. And the one thing that I remember talking to this with someone the other day, where I love to have a debate. I don't want to argue with you. I want to have a debate with you. I want to hear your point of view,
Right.
because you're going to hear my point of view, and maybe we can find some common ground. Maybe we can find a level of compromise. But at the same time, if you're going to be belittling what I believe, I'm not going to do that to you because I'm not going to waste my time on that.
I saw something the other day and it just made me think of it. It was like a little inspirational quote on Instagram, but it really hit me. It was like, what if we listened with the same passion we have of being heard? And that, what you just said, like, and I remember I was like, that stopped me dead in my tracks. I was like, that's amazing. And if you think about it, like especially in my world, like you really have to listen to these kids to know what's going on. And the more you listen to them, gosh, the more amazing it is. And then like the easier my job becomes, like, because they're just so comfortable and they know the drill, they know what's going on.
And it's so fascinating to me because working with her has softened me up because this is about compassion and patience. I'm not just pushing out a product. Yeah, go out there and be crazy, be fun.
Oh, who's a cuddly Boris?
Yeah, exactly. That's me. But you know what? It's forcing me to kind of redefine what it is that I'm doing.
Well, I wouldn't say it's like it's forcing you. It's just opening your eyes a bit wider to the world that's been in front of you the whole time.
No, I would say forcing because I smell controversy, and my first instinct is go with that.
Yeah.
But with her, I have to be careful because all of a sudden, it's not just about her. It's about these students. It's about her fellow teachers. It's about the parents. And so for that, my instinct is blow up the controversy. Good, but no.
And at the end of the day, I mean, you're basically an advocate for this cause itself.
She is, absolutely.
And like I said earlier, like I look forward to your growth. Welcome to the podcast or the Orlando podcast community.
Thank you.
I can't wait to beat her competition.
You have no better friend. You have no better friend than him. So.
As we're nearing the end, before I give the mic over to her, Boris, is there anything that you would like to plug before we head out of here?
I'm plugging this show, so
okay.
Go for it.
Good, Melissa. I'm going to put up your Facebook right up there on the board. Yeah. And anything else that you want to plug or anything else, like your final thoughts?
Just go into when it does premiere, just go into it with an open mind, ready to learn, ready to laugh. Don't feel bad if you're laughing, because you're not laughing at people.
Mm-hmm. You're laughing
with them. They're
Yeah.
funny kids. I mean, I had a blind student, and she liked to arm wrestle other kids in class because that was a very tactile way for her to interact with people. And so she would practice arm wrestling by herself, and she would sit there and go, and I'm like, oh, are you winning? And she'd go, yeah, but sometimes I lose. And she was just like so fun. And she knew the joke. Like it wasn't just like she happened to say something funny.
Right.
Like she knew what she was saying. Yeah. And so they're just funny kids. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm so excited for you guys to meet the people I enjoy spending my time with. And that's the gist of it.
Isn't this great?
That's amazing. And I got to say, Melissa, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. You've been doing some amazing rounds with some amazing broadcasters
I know,
here.
it's like blowing my mind though.
Here in Southern Florida, and I am honored that I was on your list because
this has been great.
I look forward to it. I look forward to having you back on the show to touch base with you. Once you're up there. Oh, don't forget about the little guys down here.
No.
Not the little guys. I said this is one of the most important podcasts here in Orlando. So.
But with all that being said, if you're not laughing, you're not living. Live every day to the fullest, but always do it with a side of chaos. And we will see you guys next week.